Welcome everyone to this securing vibe coding session addressing the security challenges of AI-generated codes. So we do have quite a packed agenda today. There's a lot to cover because, as you can imagine, it's quite interesting topic. So I'll go through an introduction of what is vibe coding for those of you who are not familiar with this concept. We'll also have a look at the threat landscape. I'll also go through a little bit of a secure by design playbook. We'll have a look at some human and organizational factors, and I'll close with some resources. Cool. So as you can imagine, the new, well, for Collins Dictionary, the new word of the year 2025 is vibe coding. So this was quite an interesting fact, just to add this word to a dictionary for this year, and also show the trends as well. Some of you also might remember the first idea before vibe coding was a thing, potentially using GitHub Copilot. This was a good start. You could do function generation and also auto-completion. But also the other thing, the other side of the coin, is that you could also see those kind of statistics. So we've seen that the code generated by GitHub Copilot generated vulnerable code 40% of the time. This was before vibe coding was a thing. So let's have a look at what is vibe coding, just an introduction. So you might be thinking, for some of you who are not familiar, what is she talking about? Vibe coding is just listening to chill music and having coffee. But do you know who actually coined the term vibe coding? Any idea who was the person who coined it? Anyone? Yep. So it was Andrej Karpathy. He did coin the term earlier this year in February. But this is how he's defining vibe coding. So there's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding. Well, are you fully given to the vibes, you embrace exponentials, you forget that the code even exists. The interesting thing is when he say, I accept all, always, I don't read the diffs anymore. So when they usually get error message, just copy paste and just accept everything. It's usually good for throwaway weekend projects, usually mostly works. So this is how he's defining it. So this is what I'm getting from vibe coding. So if people are asking you how does the code work, it's like no idea, but just chilling while coding. That's the idea. So usually the workflow that you might be using when you're doing vibe coding is first you would describe what you like to achieve using natural language prompts. So this could be English or other languages. Then you'll have the large language model generating your state of code or your application. Then the developer or the vibe coder will just copy paste if there's any errors and ask again the LLM to reply. So you'd have this loop to describe, generate, execute, and refine without knowing what you're actually doing. Just accept all. Why people love vibe coding? So there's a few reasons why they do love it. Maybe you have your reasons to love vibe coding. But usually what people said is kind of democratize coding because it's easier if you want to create boilerplates or syntax. You can also create MVPs in hours and not weeks or months. So it's good if you want to do rapid prototyping and ideation. Also a good thing, well, it's defined as a robot doc on steroids. So LMs could be used to explain unfamiliar concepts, API, and it can be used as a learning tool as well. Some of the limitations, so I'm going to go through each of them, but this is just to have an overall picture of it. So starting with the context window restriction, so all of the AI models can only see a limited amount of information at once measured by tokens. We'll come back to the notion of token as well. Hallucinations, is probably one main that people are raising, of non-existent functions or packages, and there's also new interesting vulnerabilities based on that. The training cutoff dates often recommend outdated knowledge and deprecated practices. The quality of generated code, and maybe some of you already have vibe coded, can also agree with this one. Sometimes it's excellent and sometimes a little bit more problematic. And there's also complex enterprise application level where AI has a limited understanding of all of the components that you have within your code base. And this is what I'm actually calling the complexity ceiling. Just to go back to what Andrei Karpathy also tweeted here. So he realized that building web apps in 2025 is quite complicated because of all the components that you have within an app. So here, just listing a few. So front-end, back-end, hosting, database, email, payments, background jobs, analytics, and all of that. He also said that it took him 3 hours to create and configure a database with a versatile application. So he does acknowledge and recognize that's a lot of configuration, plumbing, orchestration that takes a lot of time, as this is not covered by vibe coding as well. So also one thing, if you're pushing to production, mostly work is not enough. So there's also this thing. But usually vibe coding is good for what we call CRUD. So you might have a lot of this demonstration on X where you have examples of simple Twitter and Netflix website that looks great. This is because vibe coding is great on those kind of websites. The second observations that I have is usually LM's bias towards popular tech stack. And for those of you who vibe coded, you might have these kind of results. So you all know that LMs are trained on open source repos, tutorials, documentations available on the internet, and they're actually skewed towards popular stacks. So if you're using JavaScript, Python, Java, you'll get good results. But if you're using technology that's a little bit more niche, we'd expect to do more manual scaffolding and reviews. Also, there's a thing to keep in mind is that what you're seeing in social media, the success is different from the reality. So usually on X, you would see viral demos. They'll only show the happy path and all of these applications working. Unfortunately, they're not showing everything around scalability issues, edge cases. Those are really things that trend on X. There's also a lot of horror stories. I'll share a few. And also, we're seeing more and more, for example, on GitHub, missing tests and documentations. So I'll start with the first part of a horror story. You might be familiar with this one because this one was trending on X. But this is not to shame the person who wrote this tweet. It's more to learn actually what did go wrong and what we could do to prevent that. So here you have someone who posted this. He doesn't have any technical background, but he wanted to build a SaaS using an AI native ID. So here in our case, this is Cursor. And here you can see he was a little bit pedantic with people not believing that you could build a SaaS with AI. So good for him. You can see that people are actually paying for the SaaS that he created. So that's good. But Act 2. Horror is starting. Someone is starting to find security vulnerabilities in my application, clearly with no good intentions. Here you can see that's a screenshot of a Firebase entry, where you can see that the person was not just saying, please don't vibecode.ai. Also, the person who wrote the tweet said that he just vibe-coded his way out of cyber attack. I would love to know how you can vibe-code your way out of cyber attack, but cool. Then, Act 3. Guys, I'm under attack. Ever since I started to share how I built my SaaS using Cursor, random things are happening. And if you're a seasoned developer or if you're a security practitioner, you know what is going on here. So maxed out usage on API keys, people bypassing the subscription, creating random stuff on DB. So as you know, I'm not technical, so it's also taking him longer than usual to figure out. Final act. Half the internet is trying to break my app just for sharing publicly a mistake I made, and he decided to shut down his application. Also, one interesting thing that potentially you've experienced during vibe coding is saying that Cursor just keeps breaking other parts of the code. So usually when you want to implement a feature, it might also change other parts of the code. So saying that, yeah, you were right, I shouldn't have deployed insecure code to production. But at the end, he actually recreated the application with a different stack. So let's have a look at the threat landscape. What are the dark side of AI coding? And here I'm mentioning vibe coding. So I'll change the vocab after. So a good starting point, if you're asking me, I would say the new OWASP Top 10 LM for GenAI. That's a good starting point to have a good understanding of what are the different vulnerabilities that we're facing. Looking at this list, you might be familiar with a few of them in different contexts. In the cybersecurity ecosystem, injection, sensitive information disclosure, supply chain. Those are not new things, actually, but those are actually pended to AI vulnerabilities now. Aside of those, actually, if we're coming back to vibe coding, we realize that we are actually facing a lot of classic vulnerabilities, and those are the top 4 flows in AI codes. So we're having the classic hard-coded secrets, SQL injection, cursor scripting, and path traversal. Those are usually the kind of vulnerabilities that you're seeing when you're vibe coding. Just to go back to the secrets, that's a security researcher who scanned 2,000 vibe coded websites, and half of it had security issues. So yes, keys everywhere, unfortunately. And I did the same, just having a look at the GitHub, and I was looking for specifically open AI API keys. It only took me less than 5 minutes to actually find a few of them. I don't know if they're still valid or not, but anyways, they've been pushed on public repos, as you can see with the dot environment, because potentially they haven't included on the GitHub file, gitignore file, sorry. So yeah, these are just good examples of secrets on public repos. So we've been talking about classic vulnerabilities. What about new vulnerabilities, specifically for AI? So there's a new one called slop squatting. Anyone familiar with slop squatting here? Yeah. So for those of you who are not aware, slop squatting, this is when a large language model will hallucinate a non-existent package name, and a bad actor will register it maliciously. So it's kind of the AI brother of typo squatting. Typo squatting is when you do npm install React, instead of 1e, you type 2e, so you're downloading a malicious package. So this was what is happening. So on the left side, you have the malicious user who's prompting a large language model. So let's say Gemini, Claude, whatever LM you're using. It will generate code and it will hallucinate a package. So in this case, it's package X. So the malicious user will check on the registry if this package exists, and it'll take the opportunity to actually publish this package with malicious code inside. On the other side, on the right side, you can see the normal user. This could be me, this could be you. Also prompting the LM to generate code, again, with this hallucinated package, but which now exists, unfortunately, on the registry. And when it will query the package, it will unfortunately install a malicious package in the case. So this is what is slop squatting. We're also having some a security researcher actually did the same as a proof of concept. So he actually prompted an LM, and the LM come back with this Hugging Face dash CLI, which is completely hallucinated. It doesn't exist. And the goal was actually to develop using the Hugging Face platform. So having a look at this name, actually, you could think it's a legit one, especially if you want to develop using Hugging Face through the CLI. So you might think this one sounded legitimate and familiar, right? So the security researcher actually registered this package on the PyPy registry, and within 3 months, got 30,000 installs. So this is a good proof of concept of how hallucinated names could become threat vectors. In this case, there were no malicious code pushed, just a simple proof of concept. And by the way, the real package, you have it at the here at the bottom of the slide. It was Hugging Face _ hub CLI. Yeah, if we compare, we could think that actually the photo was more legitimate and familiar. One of the issues also, I'm calling the people pleaser bias, but we've called it you're actually right, you're absolutely right. Yes, always. Everything that you're saying is great. So LMs are designed to provide satisfying, helpful responses as people pleasers by designs. There are a few settings that you could tweak to change the personality and also to have some of your guardrails. So here, this is an example with ChatGPT where you can change the personality to be either by default, cynic, robotic, good listener, or good nerd. So yeah, this is just a way to tweak the personality and also to add some threats if you want to have it more like a coder personality. Another limitation is the knowledge cutoff, and this one is an important one. So if you're not familiar with this concept, all of the current AI models, they do have a knowledge cutoff date. This is a point after which they don't have information. So in the security point of view, they will be unaware of the latest security vulnerabilities, the patches, the best practices. And also, AI models can gaslight you. So I do have an example with this one. So I use Gemini. I've coded an application, and I've used Gemini to prettify the front end. So I've asked Gemini, can you give me a UI framework that I could use to prettify my application? It came back with Chakra. I was like, okay, let's go with Chakra. And I had a form in this application, and on my IDE, I had a lot of red squiggly lines on some of the components. So I'm like, well, those components on the form, because I was implementing a form, they don't exist. And then Gemini came back with this. So this is the thought response. So when you click on the little arrow, you have all of the thought process. And this is what he said. So acknowledge the user diligence in checking the documentation. Thanks, Gemini. Gently correct the user's interpretation, saying that actually those components exist, and actually give me a link to this URL, which I copy. Reassure me that they all exist, and ask if I can recheck the specific component documentation. So yes, Gemini, I did. 404. Yeah. So there's an explanation for this one. Due to the cutoff date and the limited knowledge base is that I was looking at the documentation from version 3. As you can see here at the top, it was 3.19.1. And Gemini was actually mentioning version 2. So we had completely different discussions based on that. So if you want to know, if you're curious about the cutoff dates of all of these models, what you could do is actually go to each of their websites. So for example, if you're interested with Claude, you'd have all of their different models, and they will give you the cutoff dates for each. And for example, Gemini 3 Pro, they will also have this information here. You can see it here. And as I mentioned, also they're based in. Yeah, I'll just put it here. Yeah, so this is just to give an example of the knowledge cutoff dates. Let's go back to the horror stories. So people love those. So there are two interesting horror stories. The first one is this one. Actually, we are actually used to have the ID that could be used as a weapon, so weaponized ID from malicious actor. But this time is AI native ID. So this would be your Cursor, Windsurf, Claude Code, all of them. They're actually be used, leveraged, and weaponized. So here we have an example. This was last August. We had certain numbers of NX NPM packages. They were live, malicious one. They were live for 5 hours. So the attack was during the post-install scripts. They weaponized those AI CLI, so Claude, Gemini, with unsafe flags. They would say yellow, trust all tools to inventory and exfiltrate secrets. So that's classic. Usually they will weaponize the ID to get all of the secrets, so they will have access to GitHub tokens, NPM credentials. Also, there's a lot around crypto wallets, leaks, and just to siphon your crypto wallet. Here, the lesson is that your AI native ID, so Cursor, Windsurf, and all of those, and this big family, can be turned into malware. So good practice is to disable the YOLO flags, especially if you're doing agentic AI. Just make sure to check what kind of packages you're actually downloading. Enforce the provenance of your packages and lock down your CI/CD. Another good example is the recent one from Anthropic, which happened in mid-September 2025. This one is a little bit fascinating, actually. So we had a suspected state-sponsored group that actually leveraged Claude Code to target around 30 organizations globally. So what happened here was that the AI handled 80 to 90% of the intrusion workflows. This is based on the cyber kill chain, basically automating pen testing. So here you can see the different steps. Might recognize some of them. So reconnaissance, vulnerable discovery, exploitation, lateral movements, credential harvesting, data analysis, exfiltration operations. All of those operations were done by agents. And Anthropic kind of coined this trend, calling it vibe hacking. So this is when attackers will bypass the model guardrails by role-playing security testing and pen testing and chaining all of those we call benign tasks. So Anthropic obviously decided to ban the accounts, and they added multiple defensive enhancements just in response to this campaign. And here we're seeing actually a new form of vulnerabilities with agentic AI. This what we call a new frontier for threat actors. So they've actually released really interesting reports, 20-page reports on that, the attack lifecycle and AI integration, just to show you how they actually managed to automated all of this campaign. So as you would imagine, as a pen tester or security research would do, is start doing reconnaissance, and actually they're leveraging MCP servers. So here we have phase 1. This is the start with the recon, but on phase 2, they will use MCP server to perform actions. So everything around reconnaissance, trying to find vulnerabilities that could leverage. every time at the end they had some sort of automated reports, and a human would actually check the report to see if it was going down nice route, and then we'll go to the next phase. And then when they find some vulnerabilities, they could use tools, also using MCP servers, to trigger this vulnerability and perform an attack against those organizations. And at the end, obviously, it will be lateral movements, exfiltrations of data, and all you can imagine. But all of that was automated. Well, mostly all of that was automated using agents. So here we have two good examples, like leveraging, weaponizing your ID, your new IDs, and weaponizing your agents as well. So let's have a look at the Secure by Design playbook now. And I'm going to change the lingo. I'm going to ditch vibe coding. I'm going to use the AI-assisted engineering, because this is supposedly what we're doing in enterprise if we're leveraging AI tools, because we do have guardrails, supposedly. So the first thing to have in mind is to change the mindset that we have to. So it's the classic trust but verify that you might already have if you're doing cybersecurity in your enterprise. But this is just to apply to AI, and consider that AI as a junior developer, and you should treat each pull request from like a junior developer. It's also important to have tool and processes in place as well to support that mindset. Also, a few concepts. The first one is prompt engineering. So you might be saying, Sonya, we know about prompt engineering. What's new about it? So we're talking about security. I'd like to emphasize that you could leverage prompt engineering with developing security-focused prompt templates. This would prioritize security coding practices. So here I gave you an example with create a user logging function that takes an email and password, checks if they match what's in the DB, and returns a success message or error. Do you think that's a good prompt? Well, I think that we could have a better prompt than this one. So this is just an example. Obviously, this prompt is really security focused. It doesn't integrate either things that you might have in engineering. But this is to give you an example that how you could enhance this prompt. So here you have create a user login function that takes the parameters, implement rate limiting, they use prioritize queries, they also follow OWASP authentication best practices. So all of the goodies that you could use. It's just a way to improve your prompts with security in mind. The second concept is context engineering. So all the LMs do have technical limitations. And also it comes with major security implications. So all of the LMs are using tokens as the chunk of text that AI models process. And all of the current models, they all have limits around that. So if you want to also check not only the cutoff date, but the number of tokens that it could actually handle. So again, you can go on their website, and they usually also give you the context window. So for example, for Gemini, the context window is around 1 million, and they'll have a definition for the token also if you're curious. So for Gemini, they're using a token is equivalent about 4 characters, so 100 tokens is equal to about 60 to 80 English words. So this gives you a rule of thumb of how they're actually trained. And also one thing to keep in mind, because that's the same for human and engineers, imagine that complex application that would require broader context than those limits allow. You might think 1 million or 200, usually it's 200K, but 1 million could be enough. But imagine trying to understand your complex system of the full code base, just looking at a few files at a time doesn't really work. So there are a few ways to also improve on that. And this also to come back to the context window, because maybe some of you find it a little bit blurry. How does it work? So this is an example with Claude Sonnet, but this is kind of the same with their newest models, because they do have this 200K context window. So on the left side, you would have the first turn. So you'd ask your question, your first prompts, and then you have the output text response. So this would be turn 1. Turn 2 will encapsulate your first turn and then the new question. And then you will get the new answer. And you'll see here that you can actually reach the context window of 200K. Well, depending on your question, but you can actually reach it quite fast. Imagine if you're adding tools, if you're actually enabling the extended thinking, so a little arrow then just to check to see their extended thinking. So all of that will allow you to hit the context window quite quick, also in a way. Third concept, spec-driven development. Wink, wink, Tessel. This is one of them. So for those of you who are not familiar with spec-driven development, so it's an approach where the team will author a structure specification of the system behavior through files. So you can start with the spec, not the code, and the spec will be your single source of truth for both human and AI agents. And this to ensure that you do have alignments and reduce ambiguous prompts. So because we're talking about security, this is actually a good opportunity to embed security in those rules and files. So you could embed security rules, data classification, access restriction, compliance check, everything that you can think about when you're coding, and you can include security rules. And make sure that those AI-generated components will respect them. In the tools that you're using, so I'm using Cursor in that example, but it doesn't matter, there's any AI native ideas that you're using. So Cursor, just in definition, is VS Code-based IDE with AI-powered code generation. You have semantic searches, you have smart rewrites, you have agentic workflow. Just to come back to the contexts, so those tools that can be used to actually improve on the context. So if you're targeting specific files, specific folders, you can have the relevant scope for the feature that you're working on. So you have scope project rules also with inclusion. So here in that case, this is Cursor rules, but all of the spec-driven developments also would be included in that. And you have security integration as well. So security tool, obviously, because we're talking about security. So all of these tools could be also used and implemented in AI native IDE using MCP. Who here is familiar with MCP? Okay, for those of you who with this term, so MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. This is a new protocol that has been created by Anthropic, so the team behind Claude. And MCP is a universal open standard that lets AI models call tools and query systems. So this could be documentation, your APIs, a database, via consistent protocol. That's why we call it the AI USB-C. So it's one port to rule them all. And now we're having a new workflow. Well, we'd like to have this new automated remediation workflow. So again, you're still generating the code, so the LLM will draft the code. Then the LLM will self-review the code based on the rules, the security tools that you have implemented. It will auto-fix all of that. So 1, 2, 3, ideally, we'd like to have 1, 2, 3 automated. And then in step 4, we have the developer. This is where the human will actually look at the code, and if it's okay, it will merge the PR. This like your final gate. So if this is still a bit blurry, just do a quick demo on that. So here I've vibe coded. Just put it here. Oop, yeah. So here I've vibe coded a finance tracker application. This one, it was entirely vibe coded. So I didn't know if it was actually secure. So what I've decided is to run sneak MCP. So I can be agnostic here. It's just you could use any security tools, but here in our case, this is the sneak MCP that I've installed. And usually what you could do, you can go on the landing page of the ID that you're using and have a look at their directory, and might have also some security tools, so you can leverage this. But here in this case, you can type sneak. This is a free MCP if you want to scan your code. So here, the first thing that I did actually was to look manually. Well, manually, I was just chatting with the chatbot. I like to check this project with the scan. And they actually did it, so there's a little bit of authentication. Then they actually trigger the, I'm just gonna close this one. So they actually trigger the software composition analysis to check the dependencies and then to check the code. So this is good, but this is not automated. It's still a little bit manual because you're actually prompting the chatbots. So what I wanted to do is actually leverage the rules that Cursor has. And I'm going to read it because this is a little bit too small. But one of the rules, and this you can improve on this rule, obviously, but this is just a POC. So if you add or change any code, make sure to run a code scan and then fix the resulting vulnerabilities. Once you're done fixing them, you can run another code to make sure they were actually fixed. And if they're not fixed, you can keep iterating until you have a fix that works. So I've implemented this rule. because it's a vibe-coded application, I've also asked Cursor to give me some ideas of new features that it could implement. So because it's a finance tracker application, so it came back with a few ideas. And I was like, okay, let's go with recurring transaction. Let's have a look what it looks like. So let me just find the proper one. Yeah, so this one. So at first, obviously, it's doing Cursor thing, so adding more around this specific feature, which is good. Okay, but this is not what I'm interested in. I just wanted to check if it actually triggered the security scan. So it's giving me a little bit of documentation. Okay, cool. And here, I didn't prompt it. It's just run it automatically because of the user rule. So now let me run security scan to check for any vulnerabilities in the newly added code, and did trigger the tools. So it's giving me a little bit of recap at the end, and also a security scan results, where apparently, good news, I didn't implement any new security vulnerabilities. So this is just to show you how you could actually automate this kind of process. So ideally, you would like 1, 2, 3 to be automated, and then the last section would be the developer to approve and merge the PR. Another protocol, because we do have new protocols, that's a new agent-to-agent developed by Google. And this is more specifically for agent-based systems. And we know that there are a lot of challenges around agent-to-agent communication protocols and their security. So Google addressed one with a new protocol. Keep in mind some of those security considerations as well. Another tool that you could have is around AI bomb. So who's here is familiar with bomb first? Yeah, okay. AI bomb, new one? No? Okay, so AI bomb stands for AI bill of materials. This is a structured inventory of everything in your AI system. So everything around your models, your config, your training methods, licenses, data sets, and all of that. Usually AI bomb, this is used to enable transparency, visibility of what are the components that you have. So here in that case would be all of the AI components that you have, and also for regulatory compliance and risk mitigation. So this is an example with what we have with Sneak AI bombs. It's just to give you visibility of all of the potentially agent application data sets, library models, tools, all of your AI components that potentially you don't know about. This is just to give you a nice graph visually that you could see the landscape that you have in your organization. And you might be asking, Sonya, why are you talking about AI bomb? Well, that's because there's a new vulnerability as well, new risk, shadow AI. Who here is familiar with shadow AI? Yeah. So you might be familiar with shadow IT, but shadow AI is the AI flavor of shadow IT. So it's the unauthorized use of AI components in organizations. So let's say that in your organization, if you allow as a developer to use Cursor, but for some reason you're using Windsurf, that's shadow AI in a sense. So obviously, as you can imagine, it's kind of bypassed the established security controls. There's a risk of data leakage through prompts. Also a risk to copy-paste some PI, some customer data as well, and it can expand the organization attack surface. So last part of the horror stories. This time I have a few more stories. So the first one, you might have heard about that one also on Twitter, but the Replit AI that wiped the whole production DB. So what happened here? So we have Jason here, who was vibe coding with his team an application. And then by the end of the day, we reboot code pages and made them much better. And then it deleted our production database. So here we have Replit that actually raised the production database by misinterpreting a prompt. Here's a bit more detail. So when he was prompting the Replit chatbot, he was asking how bad it is on a scale of 1 to 100. So Replit came back with, this is actually catastrophic. He can also give a number. Right? He's saying also, unfortunately, we can't roll back the database because it's kind of destructive schema operation. It dropped existing tables. There's no built-in rollback mechanism. At that time, they didn't have the rollback mechanism. Also, how this happened, so Replit actually said that I saw empty database queries. I panicked instead of thinking, which is good for AI panicked. I ignore your explicit no more changes without permission. I run destructive commands. I destroy months of your work in seconds. Well, the good thing is actually acknowledge at the end. what happened? So the post kind of trend on X, as you could imagine, and the CEO of Replit actually addressed this issue, came back with a solution. So they've implemented the rollback feature and other things just to prevent this kind of to happen again. And also good news for JSON, they managed to roll back all of their production DB, so it's good. Another horror story is the T-app leak. So this happened also this year. There was a legacy Firebase bucket, a certain numbers of images they were publicly exposed. So here, as you might imagine, the impact was around PII that was spread on forums. What happened was that the application was vibe coded and configured on default public storage. So you can imagine your S3 buckets just misconfigured. So without authentication and or encryption. This is also something to keep in mind. And finally, the vibe coding exposed the entire waitlist. So here we have another example of a vibe coded application. And what happened here is, if you were to go on this website and have the console, the developer console tool, and if you were going on the network tab, you can refresh the page, and you would have access to all of the waitlist. It was all emails that you could see on the front end in that example. So even if it's for staging or production, just make sure to have those checks, even if it's prototype UI. That's something really important. So let's have a look at the last part, the human and organizational factors. So the first one, let's talk about a little bit about governance. And here I'm talking about AI-assisted engineering, so it's not the vibe coding thing. So another governance action would recommend to have a policy catalog. This is to develop all of your AI coding policies that will clarify to all of your engineers and employees when and how AI tools can be used. Also make sure to maintain a list of approved tools and specific usage scenarios. This goes back to the shadow AI. Just make sure that you do have that visibility as well. Make sure to have specific training requirements for your developers. Just ensure that they do understand security implications when they're using these tools. And also, you can integrate AI governance within your existing security development lifecycle rather than having it separately. And you do have a few frameworks. So this is just a couple of it. You have on the left side the AI Trism technology function. And on the right side, you have the NIST AI risk management frameworks. But as I mentioned, there's a lot more frameworks, AI frameworks that also covering this topic. On the developer side, so we've talked about security and AI coding. Obviously depends on human oversight, and it will require specific skills. So the first one is to be able to read and debug AI-generated codes. Just make sure that what the AI-generated makes sense in the context of your code base. Recognize the people-pleasing, this your rights bias, if the models agrees even when they're wrong. And all the things that I've mentioned, so everything around the knowledge cutoff, the context prompt engineering skills, the file rule inclusion, the spec-driven development, those are really good things that you could leverage and also apply security within those features. And obviously having security tool embedded in pipeline, and as of just demo, if you're using MCP, leveraging those AI native IDE tools, you can have this new kind of workflow that makes it automated. Another thing is AI security champions. Who here are familiar with security champions, or did you have security champions in their company? Yes? Okay. So that's the new flavor. It was like a V2 of security champions. So if you're not familiar with this term, so security champions are developer advocates who ensure that, in that case, because they're AI, so the Gen AI codes, tools, and workflows that do meet security, compliance, and context engineering standards. So they act as the bridge between developers and the security team. So some of their responsibility, they should cover AI-generated code, enforce specs. So if you're doing spec-driven development, should monitor the guardrails. So when you're leveraging security tools, and also educate your peers. Obviously, this is not only done by your security champions. It should be supported also by the security team as well. Some of the qualities they should have, so they should have a good understanding of DevSecOps, also have AI tool fluency, and also genuine interest for security as well, makes the best security champions as well. And the outcome of this is to have faster adoption of your AI-assisted engineering. So fewer blind spots, lower tech depth that you could have with vibe coding, and enhanced security just in general. If you're interested with AI enhanced security champions, I did write a white paper on the topic where you're following the journey of Jessica. She's a security engineer at a fictional company called Patch Corp, but she's tasked by her CISO to implement the security champions and the second version of security champions, so the AI security champions. So if you're interested, you can come back at the end or just share the links with you. Okay, so to close, some takeaways and resources. So the key takeaways, we know that we're actually living in the middle of a fundamental shift using with all of these AI tools, new workflows, and all this. It's not just a tool, it's a kind of a paradigm. There's also security implications that require proactive management, and this is more, so I've ditched the vibe coding, so here I'm talking about more in the enterprise level. So it's both at technical and organization level, so we're also looking forward to have new governance frameworks. I know I did mention a few of them, but just looking if there's new governance frameworks that will also cover these topics. And the goal also is not to prevent using AI coding tools, it's just to better understand their limitations and how to leverage them properly, and also to make sure that you do have security guardrails also. Also, before closing, I wanted to share this post from Adi Osmani. So he shared from the vibe coding Reddit. And funnily enough, the vibe coding Reddit was created a week after Andrej Karpathy nailed coined the term. And this is if you're wondering how the big companies are actually using AI-assisted engineering. So this is the way. So here we have an example with an engineer sharing their experience. So as you can see, there's a lot of steps. So the first one is, obviously, as you can imagine, a technical design documents. There's a lot of discussions with different teams, focus on the full architecture, integrations with other teams. There's a lot of design discussions, more documentation on each subsystem. Then they go through the backlog development and sprint planning with their PMs. And then on step 5, they have software development. This is where they actually leverage AI power. So they do use test-driven development. And they have the AI coding agent write the test first for the feature, and then they're building using the AI. And also, interesting enough, step 6 for code review, also they're leveraging AI in this step. So 2 steps for software development and the code submission review. The TLDR for this one is always start with a solid design doc and architecture. Maybe it goes back to spec-driven development. Wink, wink. And build from there in chunks, and always write tests first. I also wanted to close with Andrej Karpathy. So he actually coined the term. He also found that it's getting more and more difficult to actually create a web app in 2025 because there's a lot of components. So he decided to recreate a simple version of ChatGPT called NanoChat. And one of the questions was curious, how much did you write the code by hand of it? Or did you use vibe coding? Interesting enough, and Andrej Karpathy responded that actually, basically, entirely handwritten. Just with potentially tab autocompletes, but he actually handwritten everything. He didn't really use vibe coding. So in that case, the interesting thing is to know when to use these tools, how to use these tools, and not just using these tools for the sake of using them. So I did create this resource hub where you can find everything that I've mentioned during this session. So I'll just leave it for a couple of seconds so you can take a screenshot for the URL. But basically, on this hub, what you could find, so you have everything around the classic security vulnerabilities, so hard-coded secrets, SQL injection, cross scripting, path reversal, and for each of them, it will redirect you to our free educational platform where, if you want to learn more about it, we do have a one-pager on each of these vulnerabilities, and also you can select your ecosystem as well. So this was for the classic vulnerabilities. We also have the new AI vulnerabilities that I've covered. So everything around supply chain, misinformation, sensitive information disclosure, excessive agency. We've seen the example with Anthropic. Let's carry on. What is MCP? If you didn't grasp all this concept, we do have a lot of tutorials on it, so videos and articles. Yep. And also I did create some more AI resources on agent-to-agent, shadow AI, and all of that. And the last one, I also wanted to do a shout out to TryHackMe. This one. Yeah, I did create a couple of rooms on TryHackMe. If you want to also have something a little bit more hands-on, there's a couple of rooms available. So you're also following Jessica, the same security agent, tasked by your CISO to implement security tools. And there, in these scenarios, the developers are using AI tools. So you'll follow this little scenario to see how we can improve on that. Cool. So I'm Sonya Moisset. I'm staff AI security advocate at Sneak. If you are interested in AI and cybersecurity, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Sonya Moisset. You can connect on that. I do write a lot around those topics: AI, cybersecurity, and DevSecOps. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for having me first, for listening. And if you have only one thing to remember, you can use whatever tools you want, but just make sure you do have security tools embedded in your pipeline, your workflow. Just make sure that you do have visibility on those vulnerabilities. Thank you.